Right now, on the longest flights in the sky, one of the pilots flying the aircraft is asleep in a bed most passengers do not know exists, a few feet from their seats. And it is not just allowed, it is required. Across the world's ultra-long-haul network, hundreds of these flights take off every week, each one carrying pilots who will sleep in shifts at 40,000 feet. But this is not exhaustion, and it is not corner cutting. It is the opposite. So why can't a tired pilot just rest at a hotel like the rest of us? And why is the bed instead bolted into the airplane? The answer involves the unbending biology of human alertness, a hidden room you have walked past without noticing, a rule book written after pilots fell asleep at the controls, and a new generation of 20-hour flights pushing all of it to the edge. Airlines routinely book high-quality hotels for their crews once they land. Onboard sleep is a completely separate operational practice. On a flight spanning 15 hours, the ground is thousands of miles away, and a pilot cannot simply pause the flight to check into a hotel. The sleep occurring behind the locked cockpit door happens because there is no ground accommodation at 40,000 feet. Far from representing corner cutting or negligence, this arrangement is a calculated safety system. It represents a rational compromise between airline scheduling and the hard limits of human endurance. Aviation engineers and safety regulators recognize that constant wakefulness on ultra-long-haul routes is biologically impossible to sustain safely. Providing a controlled environment for pilots to sleep in shifts during the cruise phase ensures that at least two fully alert operators are always at the controls. Onboard rest is a tool designed to actively manage fatigue, not a substitute for a hotel room. How does prolonged wakefulness actually degrade a pilot's cognitive performance? And what happens to the human brain when it is pushed past these limits? The human brain operates on a strict internal clock known as the circadian rhythm, which dictates alertness over a 24-hour cycle. When a flight crosses multiple time zones, this clock inevitably conflicts with the duty schedule, leading to a profound dip in performance during the window of circadian low, typically between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. During this trough, the brain undergoes microsleeps, brief, involuntary lapses of attention lasting from a fraction of a second to several seconds. This is not a failure of willpower. It is an automatic biological shutdown. Research indicates that after 18 hours of continuous wakefulness, a pilot's reaction time slows by approximately 30%, an impairment equivalent to a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%. Operational error rates, memory lapses, and judgment errors increase 2 to 3 times. While airlines can shorten ground duty times to assist, scheduling alone cannot solve the physiological challenge of an 18-hour sector. Wakefulness cannot be forced. How do aircraft manufacturers design a physical space to manage this biological reality at 40,000 feet? To house this necessary rest, modern wide-body aircraft use otherwise wasted space within the fuselage, hidden entirely from the passengers below. On the Boeing 777 and 787, engineers designed overhead lofts in the crown of the airplane, positioned directly above the passenger cabin and accessed through a concealed hatch. This overhead layout keeps the main cabin free for seating while using the empty space above the ceiling panels. Here, pilots find private bunk spaces isolated from cabin noise. Airbus takes a different physical approach on its largest jets. While the A350 features similar overhead compartments, it can also employ mobile crew rest modules. These modular pods fit directly into the cargo bay beneath the passenger floor. This lower deck configuration is also a staple of the double-deck Airbus A380, where a dedicated stairwell leads down to a quiet sleeping area. Because configurations vary by airline and specific airframe model, operators must verify layout details before flight. These spaces are certified safety environments, built with independent ventilation, oxygen systems, and active smoke detection. How do crew members manage their duty hours and rotate in and out of these hidden spaces during a flight? To enter this hidden space, pilots step through a secure crew-only door and climb a narrow vertical ladder. Once inside, the environment resembles a compact submarine cabin. Each individual bunk measures roughly 78 inches long by 30 inches wide, providing the minimum legal flat sleeping surface. Pilots rest on a 20-centimeter thick foam mattress, secured by heavy-duty restraint straps designed to keep an occupant safe during sudden severe turbulence. An independent ventilation system manages the cabin environment, circulating fresh, temperature-controlled air separate from the main passenger cabin. Above each pillow, integrated control panels house personal reading lights, climate adjusters, and a direct-line intercom linking the rest module directly to the flight deck. Safety systems are installed throughout. Every berth contains active smoke detectors, carbon dioxide sensors, and emergency oxygen masks. This is an engineered workstation designed for physiological recovery. If an emergency occurs, the pilot must be able to return to the controls instantly, which is why these pods feature a secondary emergency egress hatch that drops directly into the passenger cabin below. How do aviation laws and international regulations dictate exactly when and how these high-tech sleeping quarters must be used? To translate this physical hardware into real-world safety, airlines rely on larger flight crews. On flights lasting over 12 hours, operators add a third or fourth pilot to the roster. This rotation ensures that the cockpit is never managed by two individuals pushing past their physical limits. Unlike a long-haul trucker, a pilot cannot simply pull over when exhaustion sets in at 39,000 feet over the Pacific. The danger of operating short-staffed is clear. During a short-haul flight on February 13, 2008, both pilots of Go Airlines Flight 1002 fell asleep at the controls of their Boeing 737, overshooting their destination in Hilo by 26 nautical miles before waking up. For ultra-long-haul routes, the industry bypassed this risk by swapping tired pilots for rested ones mid-flight. A rested pilot at the controls is always safer than an exhausted one fighting biology. How do international regulations legally enforce this rotation? And what standards must these sleeping quarters meet? International aviation law dictates fatigue management, removing discretion from airlines and the willpower of pilots. Under these legal frameworks, sleep is a legally mandated operational requirement. In the United States, Federal Aviation Administration regulations under Title 14, Part 117 establish strict limits on how long a flight crew can remain on duty. Specifically, Section 121.485 designates a certified crew rest facility as mandatory safety equipment for any flight scheduled to exceed 12 hours. Across the Atlantic, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency enforces a parallel standard through Commission Regulation Number 83 of 2014. For European operators, any flight lasting 14 hours or longer legally requires at least 3 pilots and an onboard certified sleep compartment. Comparable frameworks exist globally, including Australia's Civil Aviation Safety Authority and Transport Canada, which require physical rest modules for flights exceeding 12 and 13 hours, respectively. Under these laws, the onboard bunk is treated with the same legal weight as an engine or an emergency exit. If the rest facility is inoperable, the flight cannot legally depart. Within these operations, pilot sleep is a legally mandated safety procedure. However, rules for in-seat controlled rest, where a pilot takes a short nap directly at the controls while another monitors, vary significantly. While EASA and Transport Canada permit short, monitored in-seat rests, China's regulator prohibits the practice entirely on commercial flights. How do airlines justify the immense financial cost of transporting heavy, non-revenue-generating sleeping quarters across the globe? The financial calculation of carrying a dedicated sleeping compartment is demanding. A certified rest module adds approximately 1,200 kilograms of dead weight to the aircraft, the equivalent of hauling a compact passenger car on every journey. On a typical 15-hour sector, this extra weight increases fuel burn by roughly 2%, consuming an additional 1,200 kilograms of fuel per trip. The physical space occupied by these overhead lofts or lower deck pods also displaces up to 12 passenger seats. On a high-frequency route, this lost real estate represents an annual revenue sacrifice of $3 to $5 million. Adding a third or fourth pilot to the roster introduces more expense, as augmented flight crew members command a 10% salary premium. Yet airlines accept these penalties because the infrastructure is a regulatory prerequisite, not an optional luxury. Operators cannot trade crew comfort for a higher profit margin. If an airline wants to sell tickets for an ultra-long-haul city pair, installing a certified rest facility is the only legal pathway to takeoff. On extreme sectors, the economic logic is absolute. The rest system is what allows the market to exist. If there is no rest facility, there is no route. How do these strict legal requirements and harsh economics manifest in the real world on the longest commercial routes currently operated? Today, the longest scheduled commercial flight in the world operates between New York and Singapore. Spanning 15,349 kilometers, this route keeps an Airbus A350-900 ULR airborne for up to 18 and a half hours. On a sector of this scale, crew rotation is not an operational option. It is the foundation of the flight's feasibility. But the boundaries of long-haul aviation are pushing even further. Under a program known as Project Sunrise, Australia's Qantas plans to launch non-stop flights between Sydney and London by October 2027. To cover this 17,000-kilometer distance, which requires 20 to 22 hours of continuous flight, the airline will deploy a specially modified Airbus A350-1000 ULR. This aircraft features an additional 20,000-liter fuel tank to support the extreme range. Operating at these extremes has required more than just engineering larger fuel tanks. Qantas and researchers at the University of Sydney's Charles Perkins Centre have spent a decade studying crew and passenger fatigue. This research, led by sleep medicine specialists, analyzed biological data to design cabin lighting and rest patterns that align human circadian biology with destination time zones. At 22 hours, the traditional rigid rules of crew scheduling are pushed to their breaking point. How do airlines transition from simple hourly limits to actively measuring and managing the real-time alertness of a pilot? To manage alertness at these extreme operational limits, the aviation industry relies on a multi-layered safety framework, where each component addresses a specific physiological vulnerability. The first layer is physical, the purpose-built crew rest compartment. These isolated, climate-controlled cabins provide a quiet space where off-duty pilots can obtain restorative sleep mid-flight. But a bed is only useful if there is someone to take over. This is why airlines employ augmented or double crews on long-haul routes, adding a third or fourth pilot to the roster to rotate duties. To coordinate these rotations, operators increasingly look beyond rigid hourly flight time limits. Instead, they deploy fatigue risk management systems, or FRMS. Rather than simply counting duty hours, this data-driven approach uses biomathematical models to predict alertness. By analyzing circadian patterns and sleep history, airlines can tailor rest schedules to the specific physiology of the flight crew. Yet these combined mitigations have distinct limitations. While a 2-hour sleep in an overhead bunk and a scientifically timed rotation can reduce acute exhaustion on a single sector, they cannot eliminate circadian disruption. Crossing multiple time zones in a single duty period inevitably desynchronizes the human biological clock, regardless of cabin comfort. These measures do not erase fatigue, they manage it, accepting a controlled baseline of human wear to keep the cockpit functioning safely. How do pilots manage the immediate transition from deep sleep back to active duty at 40,000 feet? Waking up at 40,000 feet requires a strict transition protocol to overcome sleep inertia, the grogginess that impairs decision-making immediately after waking. Pilots are legally required to be awake and active on the flight deck for at least 20 minutes before resuming control. Yet the very image of a pilot sleeping behind a locked door remains unsettling to passengers. To a traveler, a sleeping pilot feels like an abandonment of duty. To the pilot, far into a long duty period, that controlled sleep is the only thing ensuring they are alert enough to land safely. One side sees a lapse in vigilance, the other sees an engineered safety margin. Can you blame either of them? Safety is not preserved by the illusion of constant wakefulness, but by building systems that accept human limits. To learn more about the engineering behind modern aviation, subscribe to the channel. As commercial flight sectors stretch toward 22 hours of continuous airborne time, the aviation industry faces its next major endurance test. Safely managing these extreme distances requires moving past legacy flight time regulations toward predictive fatigue risk modeling. These data-driven systems use mathematical models to analyze sleep history, circadian cycles, and alertness, allowing airlines to tailor rest rotations for individual crew members. Yet even the most advanced predictive model cannot alter human physiology. Biological limits remain unchanged, meaning no amount of scheduling can replace actual sleep. As operations push toward the absolute limits of human endurance, those hidden overhead cabins and strict duty rotation schedules become even more essential. These compartments are engineered safety systems designed to protect the cockpit from human exhaustion, ensuring that rest is built directly into the airframe itself. As aviation enters the era of 20-hour non-stop flights, managing human fatigue remains the ultimate engineering challenge. The onboard bunk is not a luxury, but a critical safety instrument. True safety in the skies does not rely on defying human limits, but on systematically engineering around them. Subscribe for more analytical insights into modern aviation engineering.